Hello and welcome back to Speed Demon Painting. Today we are taking a look at the latest Sultanate ORBAT, which is version 1.02b, and they've got quite a few nice additions in this one. As always, we'll be going over all of the different changes that have happened to it, and if you like to see more of this content and stay up to date with all of the different rules for Dystopian Wars, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for further updates. Kicking off, we have a few new changes to the special rules found in the Sultanate. The first change was to armored decking. This is a bit of a nerf because right now attacks with the aerial quality gain a single hit from heavy hits rather than the usual two. That wasn't changed, but they've added a line that says that certain attacks, i.e. the one with the rail or piercing quality, ignore this rule, and that's just a straight up nerf compared to what it was before. Heavy magazines has a bit of red text in it, which means there have been changes for those of you who are familiar with how Orcradle Studios does their updates, but this is always how we played it. I don't think this really is a change. It now just says that you can have 2 weapons out of a 3-weapon attack can contribute the lead value instead of the support actions. It's just a bit of clarification. Apparently some people thought it was a bit confusing, thinking that you could fire 4 weapons at full lead value. No, it is very much made more clear here that it's just 2 of the ones that normally would be adding the support value are now adding the lead dice value to the total. So not really a change, just a clarification. The Achilles hull is something that is completely new, and this is the big change in the whole ORBAT. There have been a bunch of different cruiser ships that can now be glued together, if you will, to form a Catamaran design. And if you do have that Catamaran design, these units can now gain +3 speed during the movement step, provided that it makes no turns. And this one is important because Power Slide was changed to clearly be stated that it is not considered a turn anymore. So these Achilles hull and also linear dash was inadvertently buffed because Power Slide is now sort of FAQ'd into not being a turn. Another thing which I almost completely forgot about, we've never really used this rule in game, but you can do a jury-rigged repair, which is the rule we almost never apply because it requires taking a whole point of damage to take care of a debuff, and with so many repair cards being out there, it never really happened all that often. But should you do so with one of these Catamaran designs, you can just roll an action die, and if you roll a counter, well, which also is a counter, the double counter should count as well normally towards this rule. It is made without suffering any damage, so again, just a straight up buff. Especially the +3 speed now is a very big deal for these. Maritime Patrol was nerfed, but this is totally in line with what we saw with the previous ORBAT updates. You now no longer have to have an SRS token within 5 inch of your initial target in order for this to kick in. It has to be a target that is effectively tagged by an SRS token for it to work. So Maritime Patrol nerfed, but you know, same way as every other ORBAT, so no surprises there. The Auricalcite construction is also not really changed. This is more of a clarification. You do not get any catastrophic explosions if you suffer them from an attack exceeding double your citadel value. Gotta remember, you can take catastrophic explosions from getting the same critical damage result rolled as one you already had. That's still very much in effect. You just don't take those catastrophic damage if your opponent rolls a very devastating attack. You will take critical damage though, so the catastrophic damage is just downgraded with this rule. Next up we have the changes to the different Battlefleets. The regular Sultanate Battlefleet has been updated to exclude any units that have the order trait. This is something we've never seen before, if I'm honest. Most generic battle fleets in any other ORBAT had no such restrictions, and in fact were very appealing because you could just mix and match units as you go along, but the Sultanate doesn't do this. Order units very much are their own thing, and yeah, we'll see that Battlefleet pop up in a second. Of course, there's been a new Battlefleet added, the Suleiman Battlefleet, you know, big old box, new Battlefleet. I think it's a bit of a weird one, because well, obviously you need the Suleiman class ship. You also have to include at least one Aydin unit, which is a support ship. That one has been made way more attractive. A little spoiler of what is coming down the line, so good thing there. Then you have to include a further 3 units with the Sultanate and Turkish trade. So these are just for Turkish ships, and you may not include more than 2 of any unit except for Iskander class units. However, you need a maximum sized Iskander unit to get your big benefit, and then your Suleiman and Constantinople class units. Constantinople's, as a quick reminder, those are your 4 SRS capacity cruisers. Then they do not have their SRS capacity reduced when crippled. I think that is very, very taxing. You need to take the big Suleiman, you have to take an Aydin, then one of your 3 has to be one of those Iskander units, and then you're not really left with a lot of points to take anything else really. Taking another 3 Constantinople classes just to benefit heavily from this rule is right out, so I think it's a bit of an odd fleet, if I'm honest. That being said, there's also the new Order Battlefleet. This is very much a placeholder, if you ask me. Order ships now have to form their own little different battlefleets. You must include a Carolus unit, which is one of the destroyer units that we'll see later down the line, and then you may include a further unit with the order trade, just a single one of them. I think there's only just one of them to begin with anyway, and it doesn't include any bonuses. Now that being said, we haven't really seen any releases for the order yet, so this is very much placeholder, but you know, it's a unique thing that certain units are excluded from the generic battle fleet, and they do just that in this ORBAT. Moving on to the outfitting yards, there was a very slight nerf to the ferric escort skiffs. It's been clarified that they can be targeted by SRS tokens. In the previous rule, you had to target them with aerial attacks, and technically SRS tokens are aerial attacks, but you can still can't target them unless you're in point blank range. Now SRS tokens didn't have any range, so that was a weird one, and now this clarified this way. Why am I calling it a slight nerf though? They've added the homing quality as well to the different attacks, which creates some very odd things, because I'm thinking things like homing torpedoes from the Enlightened can now target these skiffs, which I thought was weird. I mean, seeing a homing torpedo pop out of the water to fly up to those things, it just looks weird. So I think that's something that the developers could reconsider, perhaps. That being said, generators again get the general important note that you can't duplicate any generators, and that there are no cumulative effects from having multiple types of the same generator, so don't try to stack them with any shenanigans, it won't work. The portal generator is left largely unchanged. It's just slightly clearer that you have to place the 50mm portal token within 5 inch of the unit itself making or creating the portals, and just to make sure you have to have 2 portals to make the bomb attacks, so not a lot has changed in that rule, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here. As far as weapons go, none of the values were really changed, but they did add 2 new weapons. The first is the Helioblast. That one looks juicy. I mean, that's 18 dice, but nothing in support, so they can't stack together. And they come with sustained blast, and also a bomb. So if you're wondering, like, well, this only shoots at point blank range, yeah, but your portal shenanigans is going to help you out with the Helioblast. And then there's a new weapon, the Judgment Lance. It's also just only for order units, so don't expect to find these on any of your Turkish ships. So these models are not yet released. And they are essentially particle beamers on steroids. 5-5, no matter what range bracket you are in, with sustain and gunnery, so we have the particle beamer stats already, but again gains hazardous as well, so even a single point of damage is going to slap another emergency token, or rather disorder token, on your opponent, and yeah, that's a good thing. Also, 5-5 across all of the lengths. I'm guessing these Judgment Lances are going to be very, very popular to shoot at aerial units, because in the new version, aerial units shoot at a range bracket further. But if you're at long range, you're all still using your long range value. So I'm looking at these and seeing excellent anti-air weapons, and seeing how the game is going to be evolving to have more flying units, these Judgment Lances are bound to come in very, very handy. Now, onto the flagship changes. The first one is a straight up buff. The Anatolia Heavy Battlecruiser has dropped 10 points, and despite dropping 10 points, they've gained a massive +3 on the Citadel value. Now, Stuart already told us on the Facebook group that we'll be looking at many increases into Citadel values, and some targeted ones as well, especially in this ORBAT. We're not just seeing Citadel values being bumped across the board though, like we saw in the Crown ORBAT. It's a lot more targeted in this one, which makes it slightly more interesting as well. The Hurrem Grand Cruiser has also received similar changes, although the Citadel here has been bumped to 14 in the battle ready stage, which is a mighty +3 of them, but only +1, making it 11 in the crippled state. It did gain an extra torpedo salvo as well compared to the earliest version of the ORBAT, the one I'm basing this on because my previous video was made for this one. It's got the new Ikili hull, giving it a potential +3 speed, which is nothing to scoff at. It's been buffed by getting Maritime Patrol Standard, and it's got a shield generator now. Now, why am I saying this is a nerf? You used to be able to take 2 generators rather of your own choice. This is now set to at least be 1 shield generator and just 1 generator of your own choice. So that's a thing. In terms of weapon qualities, this isn't denoted in red, but I'm writing it here as well. There's no more option for dual flechette launchers in this one. That's because there is a ship that still has those, but it's a separate entry, which is no longer a flagship anymore. So they've basically changed that in the ORBAT as well. Then there's a new kid on the block, which is the Heritage Portal ship, is yet to come out. So these are very much my own views on this ship when looking at it. It's 255 points, which is, you know, on the high end of the scale for a Mass 3 battleship, but it only came with armor 6. That was the first thing that caught my eye, and with only 7 hull points in the battle ready state, still 7 in crippled as well. But why did I mark it as being exceptional? Well, it's got the Helioblast, and that Helioblast can't shoot if you're in a crippled state, and it is very much a selling point, I think, for this portal ship. That was a very juicy weapon that it could fire, and now it, once it's suffered 7 hull points of damage at armor 6, you're no longer getting that juicy little bomb. However, it does portals exceptionally well. It can drop them off within 20 inch of itself, so if it's in operational, or rather if this ship is operational, and you have another portal generator ship helping it out, you can get that Helioblast quite far as well. And, well, it's an Ikili hull ship with speed 8, so that thing's fast. The Helioblast, you might not even need to really work at it with all the different portal shenanigans, because, hell, at 11 speed and being able to go 3 inch in a drift, moving 14 inch, there's a good chance that they'll be right up in your face in turn 2, so that's a thing. It also gains that glorious command and control rule, allowing you to counteract enemy cards being played, so that makes it a very reasonable addition, even though I am slightly worried about its longevity. 2 Judgment Lances as the main firearm for this ship means you're rolling 10 dice. That's not that much for a flagship, but they are sustained dice, and again, perfect for shooting at flyers, which we'll undoubtedly see more of in the game. So, not a bad entry. I'm wondering to see what people make of it as they've been testing it. The Suleiman fleet carrier was already a great entry and is now at that juicy Citadel 15, which is another +3 to the Citadel, making it great, and it receives the Achilles hull rule, making it able to move up to 7 inches and a 3-inch drift. That's going to be great for getting your SRS tokens up close and personal, and SRS capacity 12 means it used to be, and it still is, an amazing carrier. Again, the only downside to this ship is the slightly odd composition of the fleet. In order to get that bonus, it's a bit odd, should I say. Moving on to the different cruisers and the meat and potato of any fleet, the different types of ships. And we're starting off with a doozy. The Aydin supply ship used to be 115 points, and my initial thought was, that's just too much for what it does, and it is now a very reasonable 65 points, and gained a rocket battery to boot, so suddenly that one looks like a very much okay ship, because what are you getting for it? Well, you get your logistical support for 65 points, that's already quite a good deal to have. You can attach it to any of your main ship, so that's great, and as a supply depot, you can remove a single level of disorder at the start of the activation, and you lose any limited quality. Don't think that's applicable in this case, but you know, for 65 points, this one now gets the thumbs up for sure. And then we have 2 new entries, which I could almost discuss side by side. The first one is the Bayezid Ikili Cruiser. This is the smallest of the cruisers glued together in a catamaran design, and it comes in at 160 points. Now, what do we get for it? Because it's all kind of new. It gets that Achilles hull rule with 6 speed, being able to be boosted up to 9, which makes it fast, very fast, especially because it has power slide and is very maneuverable. The hull points are now 6 and 5, so that's a lot better than the traditional cruisers being 4 and 3 in the Sultanate fleet, and it also gets that nice Citadel 12 now to help with taking too many critical hits. With a shield generator built in and mass 3, it means it's going to have a bit of effectiveness in taking hits. It's going to be more tanky than the bread and butter Iskandar ship, because the Iskandar is only 95 points if I'm not mistaken. So you have to wonder, what are you getting extra for those 65 points? Well, you're getting an extra torpedo salvo, and that's about it. So in terms of firepower, when you compare it to the Iskandar, you're not really getting all that much. All of that extra points are going towards toughness and speed to some extent, because you have to take that shield generator. Now mind you, for Mass 3, great generator to take, and then you can take any of the other one, including the Mirage generator, making all of your gunnery weapons essentially not being able to roll extra dice when they're shooting at you. So I can see this thing winning in shootouts versus those bread and butter ships, but again, you're mostly paying it for the toughness. Now, very similarly, the other ship is the Bursa Ikili cruiser. It's also a catamaran design, only for 20 points extra, and what are you gaining for it? Well, you got the small gun batteries at the rear, pointed at the rear. Now, I'm not saying this is a horrible ship to shoot with, but you are very much making the shooting angles very, very tricky to do this, because this means that you have to pair this gun battery shooting to port with the gun battery shooting aft and port, And then you have to shoot the other heavy gun battery, the one shooting at starboard, and combining it with the other gun battery being aimed at aft and starboard, and then still have 2 torpedo salvos to deal with as well. So at some point it's just starting to get very awkward, all of those extra guns, and I think that's something to consider. You're only paying 20 points more, of course, compared to the previous one that we saw, but yeah, good luck making the most of it. That is a very skilled commander who can make use of all of those guns on it. Then, a couple of changes to the Corollas destroyer, again unreleased, so this is a bit of theory crafting, and but you can play test them. They're now 180 points, but don't worry, it's still the same number of points. You just have to buy them per 4 now in your fleet, so slightly more expensive that way. They used to have a particle beamer and a rocket battery. They lost that rocket battery, but that particle beamer was swapped to that judgment lance that we've discussed at the start of the video. So putting all of those guns together is going to be quite easy, because you know that was 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 across the whole board. So this is where you get these funky new supercharged particle beamers. And as a bit of an extra, they gained an extra citadel point, making it harder to one-shot these guys. But to be honest, for a mass one-ship with armor 6 and 3 hull points, that's a tough cookie to crack, let's be honest. And at 45 points per model, that's a decent deal, but you just can't increase the squad size at all for these right now. The Constantinople support carrier, that's your 4 SRS capacity ship. They went down 3 points compared to the previous iteration. Or, no, wait, they gained 3 points, I should say. This shouldn't have been the one. Let's just quickly fix that. This was plus 3 points. But, you know, you're getting an extra rocket battery out of for those 3 points, so it's well worth it, in my opinion. And given how most other factions are paying 120 points for their 4 SRS capacity cruisers, this is just fine. One thing to note though, this one stays at Citadel 10, and that was confirmed by Stuart to not be a mistake. They want to have a difference in Citadel value between the Catamaran versions and the normal cruisers as well. So then as of yet unreleased model. This used to say Turkish, but is now an Egyptian ship. It is the Hashashin destroyer hovercraft. Looks great. It's still stuck at hull points 2 though, which is a bit of a change, because I'm seeing a lot of the mass 1 ships becoming hull points 3. So, however, it's gotten a bit better. It now has 2 front-facing guns. The entry used to say one aimed to the front, one aimed to the back. So that's different, and it also gained the skimming unit trait, so it's still 38 points per model for a very vulnerable chassis, especially when compared to that Corcaroli ship. But you know, it's not a bad entry. It's a playtest thing. The Iskandar cruiser pretty much just gained maritime patrol, so that's a buff and at no extra points. But I think the big loss in this case is that it stays at Citadel 10. All Citadels are being buffed across the board, and this guy just keeps hanging at that same lower value, so take that into account. And it already only had hull points 4 and 3. It does have, of course, the Chalcite construction rule and armored decking to somewhat compensate for this. But yeah, now it is really falling behind against most other bread and butter cruisers, as I like to call them. So yeah, that's a thing to keep in mind. It's still a gruesome amount of firepower, mind you, for its points cost, so don't feel bad if you've built any of them. They're still great. The Izmir monitor has had no changes, so we can skip over that one. This one is new. The Cogna maintenance ship also comes from the support squad sprues. It's again slightly more vulnerable cruiser, but only 75 points. And this is essentially your skiff repair dock. If any skiff escorts are destroyed within 10-inch of one of these units, you can roll a dice, and if you roll a counter or a heavy counter, the skiff is not removed and is instead placed in base contact with a model in a unit with this rule. It's very similar to the repair ships we've seen in the Japanese faction, where they essentially just scoop up all the different escorts and corvettes to get more of it. And you're also getting advanced repair facilities for your money, seeing how it has a rocket battery and a torpedo salvo, and it's only 75 points. I rate this as a very decent ship to get. Nothing wrong with it. Good value for money. Next up is the Memmet Grand Monitor. Now, the first thing I've written down to it, and this might be an oversight, I'm really not sure if this was meant this way, is it's only Citadel 10. Every other cruiser that we... Catamaran cruiser has been Citadel 12. And to see this guy left hanging at 10, I'm thinking they may have just missed that one. That being said, the hull points have also been reduced to be more in line with the two new catamarans, being hull points 6 and 5, which is a bit of a loss compared to what it was, because it's -1 in battle ready and -2 in crippled. And it has gained an extra 40 points, so you gotta wonder, what are you getting for it? It's also gained a point of speed as well, by the way. And now the big thing about it is, it has of course got the Achille hull rule, it straight up gained maritime patrol, and the two generators are now set to being a shield generator and a magnetic generator, so no longer have you got any choices. The previous entry only allowed you to choose one, which is weird because you have two generator slots, and that's been fixed. But the big thing is, it is now a command and control ship, allowing you to counter spell, if you will, the cards from your opponent by discarding cards with or up until you've reached the value that is normally used for initiative. If you surpass that one with your discarded cards, it just gets thrown out, so that's a great thing. And that makes the Memmet Grand Monitor worth considering, as it's one of those ships, the only one that you can just easily get into your fleet right now. So that's great. And with the advantages of the Sultan's Monitor, I think this is a better points cost for it. Although, again, I wonder about that Citadel 10, if that wasn't a mistake. The bombardment cruiser has gone up by 10 points, but it gained a rocket battery instead, so that's great. It's also cleared up that you can change the portal generator, so you can replace the portal generator with a heavy gun battery if you want to. It used to say that the portal generator couldn't be swapped, and now it's clearly stated that it can be, so that's great to see. But you know, 10 extra points for that rocket battery, that's not necessarily a bad deal. It remains a good ship. New is the Morea mine layer, and the Morea mine layer is only 60 points, which makes it a very, very cheap cruiser entry, you know, for having a torpedo salvo and a normal rocket battery, and of course broadsides, but that's normal on cruisers. This isn't a bad deal, especially if you consider that they get mine layer on top of that and have built-in mirage generators, providing some extra toughness and some extra maneuverability as well. You mustn't forget you can just teleport within 5 inches, including changing your direction, and you still have linear dash, so you don't necessarily even have to make a turn if you've got a mirage generator. I think this is an incredibly solid option to take if you're a Sultanate player. And then new, but not really new, is the Nemrut Supremacy Cruiser. Why am I saying not really new? The Hurrem Grand Monitor used to have an option to swap out the guns to Orichalcite Flagship launchers, and this is essentially that support cruisers where they're all glued together. This one's at Citadel 11, again, so slightly lower than the other ones, which really makes me wonder about that Citadel 10 for the Memmet Grand Monitor, but again, this is slightly lower than the other cruisers, the catamarans that we've seen so far. But it does come with 2 of these launchers, the bomb launchers, and it comes with the portal generator as well. And, you know, having a shield generator on a Mass 3 ship, that's never a bad thing to have. And it comes with a lot of rocket batteries as well. 2 heavy rocket batteries and 2 normal rocket batteries, all neatly aimed at the front. This is a very easy ship to pilot, so that's always something worth considering. And if you declare all of your aerial quality weapons in the shooting attacks against the same initial target, you gain +2 dice to all action dice pools, which gives you some interesting ways of splitting it up. You can use your heavy rocket battery for 9 with the normal rocket battery for 2, and do that twice for 13 dice each against the same target, so you can have 2 reasonably solid volleys of 13 dice this way, using the Sultan's hammer, just as long as you aim them at the same ship. You can only have 1 of them in each battle fleet, very much like the Memmet Grand Monitor. The Pasha has had no changes, so I'm not going to go into that one, and the Sedrazam Heavy Cruiser is not really changed all that much, it just gained Maritime Patrol, so hey, a buff. And the Tamir frigate finally has been upped by 1 point per model, but that's not bad if you consider that it just straight up went to 3 hull points. This is still one of the best Mass 1 ships in the game in my book. At 26 points you're getting an absolute steal. And that was it for the new Sultanate faction. As always, when they make a few new releases, they have to update these ORBATs, so I hope you found this guide useful, and if you are playing with the Sultanate, have fun making all the different catamarans that you can think of. I personally think it is, as a closing thought thing, I think it's great that they are taking into account all the different model options that you can easily do as a player, as a builder. It makes no sense not to have these options in there, in my book. Just give people more modeling options, and yeah, more rules, more options, all good things for Sultanate players. So, I hope you liked the video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!